In today's video, we're going to go ahead and replace our water pump on our V6 motor, located right down on the front side here. Using your plastic trim tool remover, go ahead and remove this button right here. Pop out the center, remove that clip. Remove these two screws, this one here. And this one here. Across the front, we're going to remove our 10mm screws. Remove your shield, set that aside. Now with the splash shield removed, we're going to go ahead and access our drain plug right here on the lower part of our radiator. This little knob right here, you want to turn it counterclockwise. And as this comes out, we should start to get some coolant out of here. Let this drain into your catch can or your bucket. Now that our coolant is drained out, we can go ahead and tighten up the drain plug here. Once that bottoms out, just give it a little bit more, make sure that's snug. Using a 19mm socket, let's go ahead and remove our lug nuts. Once you have the lug nuts removed, grab the wheel, remove it, and set it aside. On the inside of the wheel well here, we're going to go ahead and remove the two 10mm bolts holding the splash shield in place. Good, remove this and set it aside. On the front side of our engine here, we're going to use a 13mm socket. We're going to use our Serpentine belt idler tool. I'm going to push this back and take the tension off of that pulley and remove our belt. You reach in there and just slide that belt off. Go ahead and work our belt off. Okay, good. Pull that belt out and set it aside. Let's go ahead and grab our upper engine cover here. Gently tug that upward. Go ahead and remove that and set that aside. In this bracket right here, we have these two 12mm nuts. Remove these. This bolt right here, remove this, is a 12mm bolt. Using a 14mm socket, we're going to remove a series of bolts. We have this one here. And across the top. Remove this bolt here. Pull that bracket off. Got to remove that bracket and the motor mount. Let's remove the bolts holding this bracket to the front of the engine using our 14mm socket. Going to break them all free. Once we have them all broken free, go ahead and start spinning them out and remove them. So our lower bolt here cannot be removed. So what we're going to end up doing is, after we remove what we can from these bolts, we're going to go ahead and raise up the motor so we can get that bolt out. Let's go ahead and move on to the other bolts. Looks like that bolt won't come out either, so we have two of them that we'll have to remove after. I'm going to go ahead and work our radiator hose off. So we're going to open up this clamp, slide this back. Usually these hoses are on there pretty good. They might be stuck a little bit, so you can just grab a pair of pliers, and we're just going to try and twist this and break it free. And use a pick, work my way around here, and we're going to pull this hose off. We use our 19mm wrench, and we're going to go and remove the nut on the top of our motor mount here. Good, spin that nut off. We'll set that aside. Now from underneath the vehicle, we're going to go ahead and use our jack, and we're going to use a block of wood, and we're going to put it under the oil pan. We're going to go ahead and put a little bit of upward pressure on this here. And what we're going to do is lift the motor upward so we can go ahead and get access to those bolts up top. Now, there's some upward pressure from the jack on the motor. We're going to go ahead and tap this here, and this should separate the mount from the motor. Now, once that's free, we should be able to go ahead and raise this up. Okay. Now with the motor lifted, I'm going to go ahead and try and pull our bracket and bolts out here. Once you get your bolts out here, go ahead and pull that bracket out. Gonna open up this hose clamp here. Slide that back a little bit. We're gonna use our pliers here just to try and twist this hose, break that free. Work that back just a little bit. Pop our pick in here. I'm going to try and work that hose off. With that pulled back that far, we're gonna go ahead and separate our thermostat housing here. Once this is separated, we can pop that hose right off. To remove our thermostat housing, there's two 10mm bolts. There's one on the top here, one on the bottom. Let's get our top bolt here. Just going to remove that lower bolt on our housing here. There's a third nut on the back side here, right above the water pump pulley. And that is on a stud. It's not a bolt, it's a nut on a stud. All right, got that off. All right. Go ahead and work this a little bit. Now we have the hose here and we have the tube on the bottom that has our O-ring. So we can go ahead and work these off together. And use our hose pliers here. Try and work that off as we're pulling this. There we go. Using a 14mm socket, go ahead and remove the bolt from the middle of our idler pulley here. Gonna loosen and remove the bolt and then put that idler aside. Now we have a tensioner pulley right here. There's a bolt right here. To remove this here, it's actually a reverse thread. So we're going to turn it, instead of turning it left to loosen, we're going to turn it right to loosen. Let's go ahead and spin that bolt out, and then we'll take that pulley off. There's a few different ways you can loosen and remove the bolts holding the pulley to the water pump. You can do this from the beginning with the belt on the vehicle and go ahead and try and loosen these here, but sometimes that belt slips. Another way is if you have a special tool, there are holes on the front of the water pump pulley that you can actually engage into that, lock it, and then use your wrench to loosen this here. In this case here, what we're going to do is we're going to use our screwdriver and we're going to go between one of the nuts and the hub. We're going to use our 12mm wrench. We're going to use the screwdriver to lock it in place and then loosen the bolt. Go ahead and rotate. Once we have all four of them loose, I'm going to go ahead and spin those out. So at this point here, what I like to do is we can go ahead and start to loosen and remove our bolts, and we're just going to move our pulley around like so, and we're going to pull the water pump out with the pulley. Now the bolts that are being removed from our water pump are a combination of 10 millimeter and 12 millimeter bolts. Now by identifying what 12 millimeter bolts go where is that the holes are actually larger than the 10 millimeter. So this is a 10 mil, 10, 12, 12, 12, 10, 12. So you can pretty much identify where they go. So you're not going to be able to put the 12 millimeter in the 10 millimeter holes. That should make it a little bit easier for you on reassembly. I'm going to go around and start to loosen these here. Go ahead and remove your bolts and go ahead and set those aside. I'm going to do this for the rest of them all the way around the water pump. And once you get them out, we'll go ahead and pop that off. Once you get that last bolt out, go ahead and grab the water pump and the pulley and remove them both together. I'll go ahead and remove the gasket. Grab that, pull that out. I'm going to go ahead and clean the surface of where our gasket goes here. I want to go ahead and inspect it, see if there's any corrosion or anything like that on there. Give it a good wipe down, get any debris out of the way, and go ahead and prepare the surface for your new gasket. Now our water pump uses 10 millimeter and 12 millimeter bolts to secure the unit. Now what we want to do is we're going to check the small 10 millimeter with a little tie strap here, and you can feel it bottom out. If we go to one of the larger bolt holes, the tie strap literally goes into the cooling port of the engine, roughly about 2.5 inches. What that tells us is that these bolts, the larger bolts, go into the coolant. When we install our unit here, we want to go ahead and use thread sealant on the larger bolts to keep that coolant from leaking out through the threads and the bolts. Let's go ahead and drop our gasket down into place, and we're just going to kind of prop it up right here. Let's go ahead and lower our water pump down with our pulley. Let's go ahead and get this lined up. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and get one of our upper bolts lined up, and we'll get that lined up onto the engine. I'm going to apply a little bit of thread sealant here. I'll go ahead and install these. And do this for all of your 12 millimeters. Once you get these 3 installed here, just continue for the rest of your bolts. At this point here, once you have all of your bolts in, let's go ahead and just snug them all down. For all of your 12mm bolts that are around here. You want to go ahead and torque those down to 15 foot-pounds. Let's torque down our 10mm bolts to 8 foot-pounds. I'm going to go ahead and install our water pump pulley bolts. Just going to go ahead and get all these started by hand, and then we'll go ahead and snug them down. Once we get them tight, we're going to go ahead and torque them down to 15 foot-pounds. Now we want to go ahead and tighten these down here. Once they're tight, you can go ahead and torque it down to 15 foot-pounds. If you don't have the ability to torque these down, just go ahead and tighten them down the best you can. They do need to be pretty tight. I'm going to install our tensioner pulley here. And this one here is a reverse thread. So it's going to be lefty tighten on this here. So we're going to turn it counterclockwise to tighten that bolt. I'm going to torque down our belt tensioner pulley bolt to 35 foot-pounds. We're going to install your idler pulley here. We'll thread it in. We're going to get it snugged down, and then we're going to torque it down to 40 foot-pounds. Install your O-ring here. Once you have the O-ring in place, we can go ahead and lower our thermostat unit down here. Line this up. Line up our back crossover pipe there. Now push this into place. What I want to do is go ahead and get our bolts lined up. So what I want to do is go ahead and snug down these two bolts. There's one on the top here, and we have one on the bottom. We're going to go ahead and install that nut on the stud here. I'm going to go ahead and torque this down to 7 foot-pounds. Go ahead and grab our hose here. I'm going to go ahead and lower my bracket into place here. Now we have to go ahead and work our bolts in here. There's a little bit of a magic trick doing this here. feed this bolt through this way here. And our next bolt, which is our next one beside it, down below here, and get that lined up. Push that bolt between the AC lines there. Let's go ahead and get these bolts started in here. Install this bolt here. Now what I did when I removed this here, I actually numbered the heads of the bolts in order that I had taken them out, and then I wrote it down on a piece of paper, mapped out which ones went where, making it nice and easy for me to go ahead and pop these in, because they are all kinds of different lengths. We don't want to mess that up. Let's go ahead and torque down all these bolts to 40 foot-pounds. And go ahead and lower our motor down onto our mount here. Once you have the motor down on the mount, go ahead and lower the jack the rest of the way and remove that. Let's go ahead and install the motor mount nut. And let's go ahead and tighten that down. Once we have that snug, let's go ahead and torque it down. Let's go ahead and torque this down to 64 foot-pounds. Let's put on the back bracket here. Let's go ahead and get our bolt started. Let's go ahead and install our motor mount and bracket here. Get our back bracket on, and go ahead and get our back bracket on and install our rear bolt here. And install the mount bolt up top here. Install the two bracket nuts. Let's go ahead and tighten everything down. Let's go ahead and torque down our bolts here to 38 foot-pounds. Prior to removing our belt, I went and I drew a diagram of where our belt is to be routed and identified what pulley does what. I'm going to go ahead and install our belt, make sure that it is fully on all of our ribs on our pulleys, and then we'll go ahead and release that tensioner and tighten up that belt. Let's go ahead and bring our tensioner up and over. Bring our belt up and get that installed. With our tensioner pushed back, we're going to try and get our belt on our pulleys here. And it can be a little bit of a chore to get this on, but you want to make sure that that belt is on the ribs of all of our pulleys. As we can see, our belt is on all of our pulleys here. We can go ahead and slowly release the tension on our tensioner. Let's bring that back. Remove our tensioner tool. And we're just going to do a visual inspection as well as feel the pulleys, make sure that our belt is on all of these here properly and not off of a tooth. Once we have that confirmed, we're all set with our belt. Go ahead and install your engine cover. You're good to go. Let's go ahead and install our splash guard here. Now these here you just want to snug down. They're literally just holding pieces of plastic together. Once you have all those secure, you're all set. Install the splash shield, install the 2 bolts. Get both of these bolts started by hand. I'm going to go ahead and snug those down. You're just holding plastic in place here. Just make sure they're bottomed out with a little bit extra on there, and you're good to go. Good to install your wheel. I'm gonna go ahead and get all of our lug nuts started, and I'm gonna go ahead and snug them down. Go ahead and torque your lug nuts down to 76 foot-pounds. Go ahead, open up our radiator cap, remove that. We're gonna set this up. Once we have that on, we're gonna go ahead and get our funnel ready. And we're also going to open up our expansion tank. Pull that hose out. Let's go ahead and start to fill our cooling system. So you want to go ahead and use the recommended coolant for the vehicle application. We're going to continue to do this here until the radiator is full. So at this point here, I'm going to go ahead and put our plug in here. going to remove our funnel. I'm going to go ahead and remove our cap and funnel kit here. Install our radiator cap. Next, we want to go ahead and fill our expansion tank, and we're going to fill it to the full line. Once this is done, we're going to go ahead and start the vehicle. We're going to let the vehicle run for about 20 to 30 minutes, let the engine warm up and the thermostat open. As the engine warms up and that thermostat opens, it's going to pull the coolant from our expansion tank. At that point there, we can go ahead and open up the expansion tank cap and add coolant as necessary. We will never open up our radiator cap after the engine has been running and hot. Once we have a cap on, let's go ahead and start the vehicle and get it warmed up. After you've had the vehicle running for a little while, I want to go ahead and inspect for any leaks. If everything is okay, you can go ahead, top this off as necessary. If you're good, you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.